Well, the post-mortems can soon begin. Norwich City have lost 1-0 here to Brighton, and the reaction at full time told the story. They may not be mathematically relegated, but every Norwich player, I think every single one of them, fell to the turf. They knew that this was the final nail in their Premier League coffin for this season. A familiar story for everyone connected with this club. Unfortunately, it's not that long since we were in this situation. 2014 and 2016, when the club were relegated from the Premier League. Alex Tettey and Tim Closer were part of that squad, which was relegated in 2016 as well, of course. But the roar of the Brighton players and staff at full time told the story. That moves them on to 36 points. They're on the verge of safety. They won this game reasonably comfortably. They're a very solid team, solid defence, big defenders as well. Aerially, they're just not going to be troubled most of the time. And they saw out a 1-0 win fairly comfortably. Norwich did almost nick a point right at the end, which would have been strange because it would have had a sort of positive end to what was still a pretty negative day overall. Adam Eder hitting the post would have been his first Premier League goal, so there was almost a positive to enjoy, but there wasn't in the end. And frankly, 21 points with 5 games remaining, you have got to start looking towards the Championship. You've got to start building in as much as you can. There's only so far you can go with that. You've got to find out which players are firmly on board for the rebuild at this point. Players like Eder, should they be starting these games? Josh Martin, are they the future? Is someone like Andre Duda, maybe, who's here on loan from a Bundesliga club, is he going to be involved next season? Probably not. So is there much point playing him ahead of a Lucas Rupp, a Marco Stiepermann, or a Mario Vrancic? But we'll come back round to that. The actual story of the game: 4 changes by Daniel Farke. He brought in Tim Closer, as we expected, back from his ban, Andre Duda, Onel Hernandez and Josip Drmic, and giving way was Teemu Pukki and Todd Cantwell, Lucas Rupp and Tom Trybull. The latter two probably less surprising after the 4-0 defeat at Arsenal in midweek. Hernandez was bright. He's probably the one player who came out of this game with some form of credit. He certainly put his all into this game and did cause Brighton some problems. Fired wide twice in the first half. The goal, though, unfortunately, Closer, we know that a lot was expected of him after he came back from that long-term serious knee injury. The last time he'd started a league game was the start of January 2019, New Year's Day at Brentford, and he was stepping back in, and they needed a big performance from him. Well, they needed a big shift from him for the rest of the season because Hanley and Zimmerman had been ruled out. But unfortunately, it was one of those nightmare moments that we saw 2 of on Wednesday night. It was Krul and Drmic at the Emirates. This time, Closer, I'm not quite sure what he was doing. It seemed like a fairly straightforward pass to Duda, but he gets it all wrong. Brighton counter quickly. Aaron Moyes clear down the right. Jamal Lewis can't catch up, and Ben Godfrey just doesn't really smell the danger. Leandro Trossard, who was playing sort of on the left wing, they play a slightly unconventional 4-2-2-2 formation, which sort of falls back into a 4-4-2 when they're defending. But Trossard just charged through the Norwich defence in front of Godfrey, and then just a nice little flick beyond Krul into the bottom corner, and that was the game's decisive moment. Nice finish, and Trossard was also the man who did for Norwich at the Amex earlier in the season. He came off the bench, scored one, set up one, so he's a man that Daniel Farke will be pleased to see the back of. A very scrappy second half, to be honest, and Brighton seemed quite happy to try and keep Norwich at arm's length, and they did that mostly. I mean, the stats in the end: Norwich had 58% of possession, 12 shots, just 1 on target, which was a very, very tame side-footed pass into the goalkeeper's arms from Josip Drmic just before he was replaced in the 67th minute. That's when Daniel Farke reacted. Didn't react at half-time on this occasion. Brought Pukki, Eder and Cantwell on for Duda, Drmic and Hernandez. Also brought Vrancic on for Tettey in the 78th minute. But none of that really worked. Norwich, as I say, 58% of possession. They had more of the ball, but they didn't really do much with it. There were 2 really nice crosses in the second half, one from Lewis, one from Kenny McLean, but nobody in the box, nobody gambling. And there was a degree of them feeling sorry for themselves again, but I think ever since the restart, the confidence just isn't there. They feel like a beaten side, and now they've got 5 what could be excruciating games to navigate before they head back to the Championship, and that is where they're heading. To think that they could survive from this point was already unlikely, but now they would literally have to win all 5 games, and that might not be enough, because that would take them to 36 points, which Brighton are already on. So to take that further and put it into the club's context, since 3 points for a win came in 1981, Norwich have been relegated from the top flight on 33 points twice. That was in 2005 under Nigel Worthington, 2014 under Chris Hughton. They still need 12 points to reach 33 points. That's pretty grim. They've lost 8 of the last 10. Okay, season was suspended, global pandemic, behind closed doors, etc, etc. But spanning that 3-month break, they've lost 8 of the last 10. They've only scored 2 goals, one of which was that Lewis winner here against Leicester. The other when they lost at Tottenham, which was a penalty from Pukki, wasn't it? So it's not looking great, is it? There's no positive spin to put on this one. If you're perfectly honest, and they head to Watford on Tuesday night, just with pride to play for it. If they can push back that dreaded day any further, then great, I suppose. But we think the earliest it can be confirmed would be next Saturday if they lose to West Ham. I don't think it can be confirmed on Tuesday night unless literally every result goes against them during midweek as well. So yeah, as I say, the postmortems are going to roll on from here. Our live updates at Pinkham.com were really pretty angry. Talking about ownership. Reports this week that Burnley are trying to find wealthy investors now because their owners feel like they've taken them as far as they can, and of course they've established themselves very well in the Premier League under Sean Dyche, been very solid defensively. They've probably done it the ugly way, but they have set that club up for a very strong future because they keep surviving at this level, and they're going to do so again this year. So possibly lessons that can be learned from that. We've got lots of time to talk about it, so I won't go into that in depth at this moment in time, but it feels as we stand here today that if they go back down, and obviously that they need to try and yo-yo, if they come straight back up then great, but I think there'll be a little bit of fear. We'll enjoy it, of course. I think we're all looking forward to the Championship as we stand here today. No VAR, of course, which is one little positive, but Norwich back at the level where they should be competitive. And then if they come back up, everyone's going to be a little bit reticent as to what that means, as to whether they can compete. They're millionaires on the billionaires' playground. That's a phrase that I've used a few times this season. If they then were to come straight back down again, then that is possibly evidence that the self-sufficient model and not having wealthy owners means you cannot be competitive in the Premier League. You're certainly drastically improving the degree of difficulty that it takes to survive in the Premier League. But again, as Stuart Webber has said so many times, money is no guarantee. You look at Fulham, look at Villa, they could still go down this season. They spent 100 million plus. So those theoretical conversations, there's going to be plenty of them. But I would imagine that most people now, most Norwich fans, just want to get back to the Championship, regroup, find out which parts of this squad are going to stick together, see if Daniel Farke can find a way to reinvent the project, if Stuart Webber can pull off a bit more magic in the summer transfer window once they're back in the Championship, because he's learned some pretty harsh lessons about investment and recruitment in the top flight this season. Of course, his first proper year in charge of a team in the Premier League. So, yeah, lots of questions to be answered. But for now, a 1-0 defeat to Brighton leaves Norwich on the verge of relegation back to the Championship. Todd Cantwell was still on the pitch about 10 minutes after the final whistle. Just didn't look like he could face the dressing room, basically. Onel Hernandez as well sat with his head in his hands at points just to the left of the dugout. We didn't see them, but apparently on the TV pictures you could see Alex Tettyton closer were there as well. So a real low day for them, and you do always feel for players in this situation. It's grim, isn't it? It sucks. Relegation battles are not enjoyable, and since the restart that's now 5 successive defeats, the only goal being Cantwell against United in the FA Cup, of course, and it's looking bleak. I can't put a positive spin on it for you, I'm afraid. just a shame that Adamida didn't manage to get that goal back. We all thought it was in from where we were sat. Came back off the post and it looked like it was going to go in off Matty Ryan, the keeper, at one point, but that was a cracking cross from McLean, and he did really well to stay strong and flick it on, but couldn't even have that to enjoy today. So a 1-0 defeat. Thank you very much for watching, and do let us know what you think in the comments below.